So over 2 months ago, I made a video talking about a user by the name of rossdraw. He is also an artist, very big, very popular, over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and is pretty well known in the art community. And at that time, I made a video as well too talking about a rossdraw expose. It was a document made by a user named Phoenix, and it was supposed to be all these different allegations against rossdraw of things that he apparently did that was really bad, and was it was just pretty much an attack on rossdraw. It was pretty much saying, hey, he's one of the worst people on this planet. And I covered the document, I went through things, I shared my points. If you want to go hear them again, go check out that video. But essentially, I came to the conclusion that this was something that really needed to hear both sides, and that's something I was hoping Ross would eventually do. And fast forward to present day, he has now finally done it. So I want to go over it. I will share my thoughts, and I will highlight the things that I think is the least important, or things that I think adds a lot more context and clarity overall to the entire situation. But before we get into that, I do want to provide some context here as well too. Ross did make a different statement earlier when he talked about the AI concerns, because that was one of the big topics, and then he got dunked on because he never addressed all the other allegations in Phoenix's document, which I agree was not really a good idea in my personal opinion. I believe if you're going to address this, you might as well address the rest of them and just get it all out of the way. But he talked about it here. He said in 2022, he made, and I'm going to go over this more in depth later on, but he said in 2022, I made a video expressing my curiosity about AI as a creative tool at the time. Saw it as an interesting and fun experimental resource, something many artists were exploring as it emerged. However, as the conversation around AI evolved, so did my understanding of its impact and on the art community. He says, at my core, I love experimenting with different ways. And then he just goes on to explain more. I covered this later in the video, so I'm not going to read all this right now, but he gave all his explanation. He just talked about it. He said for his most recent book project, he did briefly explore AI in the early concept phase, but he made the clear decision to remove it to ensure the final work is entirely his own. He said this book is a reflection of his artistic vision. He wants to reassure that there is no AI in it. He said, that said, I have important conversation with friends and peers who will help me better understand the impact AI can have on artists. I take full responsibility for my missteps and recognize that I need to do better and educate myself, especially since so much has changed since my return to social media. I now understand that AI poses a real threat to job security and livelihood of my peers. To my longtime fans, I'm truly sorry for letting you down. To the art community, I sincerely apologize, and I'm committed to staying informed and doing better moving forward. And so that was his statement, and he talked about it, just saying thank you to his fans, etc., etc. And then moving here, a lot of people were talking about him not addressing everything else, and so this didn't really do much in the grand scheme of things. People were like, hey, why are you addressing this but nothing else? And then fast forward to present day, and boom, got the whole video. Released it 10 hours ago, at least at the time of me making this video. And yes, almost 40 minutes long. We're going to go over all of it, at least most of it. Get ready, grab your popcorn, grab your drinks, sit down. It's going to be a lot. So one of the first things about the document that I always questioned about the Phoenix situation was the fact that there was never really an explanation given to who rossdraw is to Phoenix, or exactly what friendship they had. It was just more of that, at least from the way that it was posed, is that they were good friends or that they were on good terms. But from the way Ross has explained it, it's a lot different than that. But let me play Ross's side.
I need to give you a little more context on the author of this doc and how they play a role in my life, because I feel like that's important, right? Like, who is this person? So the author of this document, their name is Phoenix Soul. And there's usually an unspoken rule in just culture itself to, like, have boundaries, right? Like, hey, I'm here creating content, and this community, and try not to blend those lines, try to have a wall. I wanted to maybe see through that and challenge that a little bit, because at the core, we're all human, right? Why am I putting up a wall and like trying to, hey, you're over there, I'm over here vibe? That's like, I feel like that's not really my style. I'm kind of an open arms type of guy. Whenever I post something on Instagram or YouTube, I try my best to like answer the comments, because you guys are taking time out of your day, you're appreciating my art, and it takes effort to write something, right? And I wanted to match that energy of your enthusiasm and show my appreciation. I thought maybe I could get to know my community. I think that's so cool.
Ross is right with that point. When you do content creation long enough and you start to gain a fan base, or you gain a community, you start to really try to, want to interact with your fans, and you want to, talk with them, you engage with them. You want to say, hey, how are you doing? Maybe even have like a friendship with them of sorts. It's something that you want to do. It's a human thing, right? As Ross said, it's a human thing. You want to connect with other people, and it's only right as a creator that you want to interact with people. But the thing is, typically as a creator, you kind of have to, it sucks, but you kind of have to create that barrier. You have to create that wall and not really interact with people in your community for the reasons that he's about to go over in this video. But it is something that is honestly pretty true, and you'll notice that with a lot of creators, especially certain ones. I think one that comes to mind you may have heard of is ProZD. He made a video talking about it at one point when he had to address some videos that he was making, and he was really upset and really annoyed with a lot of people who were getting mad at him having his own friends in his videos, and he was really just, you know, just it left him really, I wouldn't say like disgusted, but it left him really angry, because he was like, yo, I'm not your friend. I'm a YouTuber. I make videos. You watch them. You enjoy them. Cool. That's where the line ends. There's nothing else between. In his own words, he was just like, we're not friends. And he's like, I'm not here to pretend like we're friends. And I mean, that's honestly as blunt as it can get. And I think that's something that I think some people need to remember at some points in time, is that any creator you watch online, any creator that you enjoy, it's great to enjoy them, and that's fine. But 99.9% of the time, they are not your friend. You can donate as much money as you want. I know some people like to think that donating money is a way to maybe create that friendship or barrier with someone, but it doesn't work that way, dog. It really doesn't. Those streamers that you donate money to, they don't care about you. There's no friendship. They might say, oh man, hey, what's going on, man? Long time no see. How are you doing? I guarantee they don't know who you are. They don't care. They don't remember you. Only way they'll remember someone is if they happen to donate money so frequently that their name is on like every single stream that they do. But beyond that, streamers don't care. Streamers don't recognize anybody. They pretend they do, but for the most part, most of them don't, especially the bigger communities. Anyways, the point is, I understand what Ross is talking about there, and it's a legitimate point.
You guys support me, you guys root me on, and I want to try to be of service and availability. Fennec Soul was a very vocal, enthusiastic member of this community, you know, commented on a lot of my artwork, take an appreciation and liking, trying to, you know, talk to me and get my attention. And at first, you know, like my initial reaction was like, oh, I don't, you know, but then.
So I just had to stop right here real quick to explain what you're looking at. This is a conversation between Phoenix and Ross, I guess in the early days when they didn't know each other, and, you know, that's really all it was. So Phoenix replies back to a story from Ross. He says, so when you buy me dinner, Ross says, LOL. It continues on. Phoenix says, you will be in the area, eye emojis, and then the face emoji. And then October 5th, 2021, he says day 288, then day 289, then October 6th, 2021, day 290. And then he says, so you're going to buy me dinner tomorrow? Then the day after, day 2091. Like, holy shit, bro. What is wrong with you? Like, I'm going to be honest. That's a little excessive. That's a little extreme, bro. Like, if I'm being honest, from my point of view, this is like someone who is now being harassed, because yeah, you know, you can reply to an artist's story, you can say haha, oh, this is funny, but then when you start going on here saying day 288, day 289, day 290, so you buy me dinner tomorrow, day 291, like, bro, leave him alone. Relax. That's not your friend. That's not your buddy. Why do you keep messaging him? But let's continue.
I'm trying to go back to that principle of everyone is on their own journey, and maybe I can be a positive force of change for someone the way my mentors were for me. They embraced me, you know, and I thought I could kind of pay it forward, and this was my way of doing that. I messaged back and I started chatting with this person, having conversations about art. Every now and then, I think they would try and push a little bit to see how much information they could get, kind of like go into personal life territory, and it would make me feel a little uncomfortable. So I try to steer it back into kind of more art focused, more work focused. We just had like basically kind of casual conversations about our journeys, about life and things. And I had a true intention to want to help. They asked me about my Nima book publisher. I'm like, here you go. That's a little bit of context there.
So from the way that Ross talks about it, it seems like he just wanted to have a genuine friendship with just people in his community. Nothing deep, nothing crazy, but just, hey, you know, I'm here, I'm an artist, I'm established, I've been here, I've done it, you know, let me see if I can help out other people, you know, maybe talk to them once in a while, just get to know what my community is. And it seemingly became clear over time that it became at least a bad idea, at least as far as it goes with Phoenix. And so when we go and look over to some of the conversations they had, here's one of the first ones. Phoenix said, "Ross, can I ask a personal question? I mean, I'm gonna, but figured I'd be polite." Which is a wild statement already to have as it is right there. To say, I'm going to ask anyway, but that you're going to be polite. That's not being polite. I'm going to just be real with you right now. It's kind of wild seeing all these conversations in hindsight now, especially after everything else that's already happened. But yeah, it's so wild. He says, just, can I ask a personal question? He said he's going to ask anyway, but he was going to be polite about it somehow. So Ross, I guess just wants to be casual. Says, yeah, sure, why not? Phoenix says, are you, and it's censored out because I guess it's a pretty sensitive question. And then he said, LMAO, wasn't expecting that one. And then Ross said, LOL, bro, I think that's too personal for me. Sorry. And then Phoenix says, LMAO, shaking my head, fine. Wild statement. Just be like, hey, I think more appropriate response would just be like, hey, I'm sorry, man. I probably shouldn't have done that. That's a little bit reaching too far. That's more of a reasonable way to do it. I think Ross was just trying to be casual about it, but he didn't want to just be like, hey, bro, you went too far, something of that caliber. But yeah. And then next one, Phoenix says, hey, bro, I swear you're either you're smashing whoever this is. And then he says, be honest, did you smash? What are these questions? Like, I'm gonna be real with you. These are some wild questions to be asking someone, especially someone that's not like someone that you just actually met like as a longtime friend. I would never ask any content creator this at all. I don't know. To me, it seems really odd. It seems really weird. Personally, I would never do it. But hey, maybe I'm the odd one out. Maybe that's a hot take right there. But yeah, continuing on. And then he says, so what do I got to do to be in a room with you and the crew at Anime NYC? Then the last one says, okay, question. Who was your printer for the Nima book? And then he replies by saying, LOL, Global PSD. Let me know if you need to make an introduction, but I would at least have, I guess he's talking about money or something right here, but it's blurred out, he says before. So yeah, Ross is now starting to show his side of the story. Again, I'll have my own conclusions at the end of this, but you make your own so far from what you're seeing. But I do think that this starts to shed a different story of the character of who Phoenix is versus the character that he tries to paint himself and Ross in his own document. And I'm sure that, depending on how this goes with the whole Ross situation towards the end, he might try to go make a whole new document against Ross, but let's continue.
So I'm going to talk here about two conventions. For the first one, I put out an Instagram story asking like, hey, can anyone help with this convention? And I think he messaged me. It's like, hey, if I fly out to Los Angeles and help you, can you house me? And I'm going to put the whole entire exchange so you can see. And I was hesitant at first because it's a lot of logistics and thinking, right? Like, you're hosting someone, they're flying out here, you are responsible for their experience and for their time, and they were really enthusiastic about wanting to come here and kind of pushing a little bit and like trying to get me to see. I said, I don't want to be impulsive, but let me think a little bit. There are some logistical things. He's like, what are they? Let's knock them out. Who's going to drive you from the airport to here? List out all the details. I said, hey, I can pay for convention lunches and dinner and try to take you to a party if I'm invited to, blah, blah, blah. Even though maybe I'm a little hesitant and it's a lot to try to host somebody. Maybe this person just needs an opportunity, a shot. And I had the ability to give this person that shot. You know what? Why not? What's the worst that can happen? And so they volunteered for that specific convention. I thought it went well. I feel like they showed up, they did good work, and everything was good. And I started to believe maybe this could be an IRL friend. It doesn't have to be just like this internet kind of like, I'm slowly entertaining, like maybe it's possible.
So you've been keeping up with this timeline so far. Finn has been nothing but, just an internet buddy to Ross. He is just literally just someone he has talked to online. And it's just like, hey, you watch my videos, cool. You're part of the community. We might chat here and there once in a while, but that's really where it is. There was no actual real friendship. There was anything solidified other than, as Ross said, just an online friend. And so now let's go over the actual conversations that happened between them both regarding this event. Now, this is something I want to make very clear because a lot of people, I guess didn't care or didn't want to hear because they already came with their pre-notions about Ross beforehand when the situation started happening. But I made it very clear that you never see both sides of the story. You should always wait until you see both. In my last video, when I talked about the situation, I said that you only got to see one side of the story and you essentially saw cherry-picked conversations from Phoenix and Ross instead of the full-length conversation that happened between them both. When in reality, it's not to disprove and say that someone's claims are false and that they're not real, but you as someone that is participating in watching the story and you're wanting to hold someone guilty or claim that they're guilty right off the bat, you should be demanding more evidence. If someone is going to make a hit piece on someone, you shouldn't take the word based on one or two screenshots that doesn't even show you the beginning of the conversation regarding in this situation an event, or at least leading up to it and what actually happened. And that was the thing I was trying to make clear. And I guess people assume that, hey, you're defending Ross. You're saying that you know what he did is right and that he should just treat people like scum and trash. And no, that's not what I was saying. Like literally not. I was saying that you should at least want to have the full story. Have instead of just cherry pick screenshots that are here. And I guess you could say in this situation, if you want to, I guess you can say that, oh, well, you know, Ross is going to cherry pick too. But the thing is, now you at least have both sides of the story. You now have Phoenix side and you have Ross's side. Now, the difference between Phoenix and Ross is Ross came with the receipts. He came with the full conversation, whereas Phoenix gave you like one or two screenshots that were just kind of cropped out and didn't really tell you much other than, all right, here's us having an initial talk about it. And then here's me giving you my own Dragon Ball Z recap of what happened. And I mean, that's not really a lot. So we'll start with the first set of screenshots that Ross provided. It starts with Phoenix saying, if I just drop everything for a week and fly out to LA, help you for Lightbox, could you also provide send helper housing? Ross said, fine, you can sleep on my couch. Phoenix said, bet, let's go. And then Ross said, LMAL, okay, let me know, let me get you a real answer in a few hours. Is that cool? Don't want to be impulsive, but I want to. Phoenix said, listen, I also don't want to be impulsive, but I won't get far playing it safe. And then Phoenix said, okay, I will be asleep in a few hours, but I'm high key gonna buy that plane ticket while it's $220. Ross said, Phoenix said, I also have the time off. And then Phoenix said, Ross. And then Ross said, I'm not sure yet about the couch thing. Phoenix said, why not? I'll bring a sleeper bag and sleep in a corner. Ross said, LMAO, because it's still a lot, still hosting. But I think maybe you got to give me time. So as you can see in the previous conversation that happened originally between Phoenix and Ross, on Phoenix's side and what he provided, it looked like more of, Ross is trying to pressure Phoenix, but in this full conversation, it almost was like Phoenix is trying to, hey, he sees opportunity, he's trying to snap it, he's trying to go. He's like, hey, what are you thinking about? We got to go. I'm going to go get that plane ticket already. He had no confirmation. He had nothing ready to go yet, but he was already going ahead. And that to me it shows that you're more or less trying to force Ross's hand to sit there and say, all right, fine, you're coming with me. We're doing this. We're going to have it happen. When in reality, he was like, hey, give me some time. I'm trying to figure this out. Because you got to look at this is a conversation that happened in the span of like an hour. That's wild. So continuing on. And then all the caps lock is crazy too. Like, come on. Like when Ross says, I'm pretty sure he's saying like, yo, why are you buying a plane ticket already? He's like, I haven't confirmed anything yet. I don't have a confirmed answer yet, but you're already doing this. Like, why? And so continuing on, Phoenix says, Ross, at this point, we've known each other for 2 years. You should understand, wanting to do big things for your career, it should make it easier too. Extra help loading in from your home. I can cook, I can clean. Then Ross says, LMAO, I know. I think this is just kind of my year of healing. So hosting is like an on state, Phoenix said, and haven't I been your biggest supporter, your cheerleader, your voice of reason when you wanted to break healing and also motherfucking healing? You're going to a con? Like, dog, hey, say whatever you want about, Phoenix's side and his everything. This just makes you look awful, in my opinion. From the way that you really try to portray the situation in your screenshots and the way that you really try to form a narrative, this makes you look even worse because you're really trying to push someone to do something that they're not really 100% confident in. And you try to assume that just because you know someone for X amount of years that now you have this great friendship and this great bond and you're trying to snap at any opportunity that you got to go here and say, haven't I been your biggest supporter, your cheerleader, your voice of reason? And when you wanted to break healing, and then he's like, oh, but you're going to a condo, but you're healing, huh? Make that make sense. Then when it came to Ross's side, people were saying, hey, it looks like Ross is trying to have power and balance. When Phoenix just asked for some money, he was just asked for a couple change to go. And, Ross was just saying, no, he'll use someone else. When in reality, again, we didn't know any of this. We had no idea the conversations that even happened between them up to this point, or why Ross would even say the things that he says. Now, you can make your own conclusion whether or not you still think what he said to those responses in Phoenix's side is correct. But here, I mean, dog, it's going to be hard pressed to not look at this and say, yo, Phoenix is really, he's trying to pressure Ross. He like, you know, there's no power imbalance here. It's just Phoenix trying to say, hey, I see opportunity. I'm going to get it no matter what. It's like a dog, like, I got to get this. And like, you just got to relax. But let's continue. So continuing on, Ross said, like, there are a lot of questions, like who's picking you up from the airport and dropping you off, you know? There's so much more than just coming to crash. Phoenix says, Uber, Lyft, I can pester these people. Ross said, LOL, and I haven't really talked, and he hasn't really worked with me for a year. LOL, I don't know if it's free. I don't know. Yeah, it's like another level of thinking. When someone local is like, show up to a booth, okay, see you tomorrow. But you're right. Why am I compelled is that you've been around and you do want to come to Lightbox and you're a good sounding board and you know, like, oh my prince. So it's the logistics of the other level of thinking that I'm worried about. And then Phoenix said, okay, we still have 2 weeks. Think of any logistical questions so we can knock them out now. So this event was still 2 weeks away. And then this is, again, as you can see, this all happened in this time span of like an hour. This is still a crazy conversation to read, just the amount of pushing that Phoenix was doing. I get it, dog. You know, people want to say, you know, you got to take every shot you get, every chance you get. But this is a way to make someone not like you. This is a way to make someone push back and create that wall. And this is honestly, in my opinion, a point where Ross should have just put that wall up and say, you know what? I don't think we're going to make this work. You know, I think the conversation could have been a lot more professional between the both of them as well, too, if I'm being honestly spoken about this. You know, that's really, you know, the biggest thing about this that I think a lot of people also didn't want to look at was the fact that Ross, you know, if you want to hold him to business standards, then you have to understand that, you know, from the way he explains it as well too, is that there are a lot of moving parts to things such as this that you have to take in consideration. But again, these are conversations that people were not privy to because you only saw a cut narrative just from Phoenix's side. But let's look at the other part. So continuing on, Ross said, okay, here's the biggest things. He said, can you find your own ride to the airports? He says, I can pay for convention, lunch, and convention dinners. He says, also just realize, like, if I'm not on, don't take offense to it. There might be a night where I maybe want for myself, but I can still take you to any after parties like Procreate last year. Phoenix said, besides, do you really want some random stranger on Instagram interacting with you and your team that you don't know? Or me, who knows you and your team? Again, I'm not really going to try to pretend like I know their relationship, but from the way that Ross made it sound like, they were not close. They were not really that close. They were internet friends. They were internet buddies. And do we really need to go back in time to the Instagram conversations where at one point you were really that Instagram nobody who was just blowing up his DMs, hoping to get his attention and hopefully build a connection with him just by pestering him? Do we need to go back to that? So continuing on, he says, I'll ask blank and blank and see if anyone else I know in LA can take me. If not, I'll call an Uber. And then he says, sweet. If you want time to yourself, go for it. I don't need you to be around me 24/7. I know you're going to be busy, tired, and stressed out. Worst case scenario, I'll be passed out after a long day. Ross said, okay, I think try Blink first maybe, but if you're working, you got to work. You can't be on your phone and you got to be engaging and approachable. Give me 1 second. Let me think. Yeah, you got to be like, and Phoenix said, of course, I've sold at convention. I got customer service experience. And then Ross continues saying, okay, like I don't want to be on the phone police, but just be mindful, stuff like that. Phoenix said, I got to be in LA at Lightbox Expo. What the fuck would I be doing on my phone? Then Ross said, I don't know, just say it. And he says, okay, I'm down to have you. I'll put you on my story that position is filled. Phoenix said, let's go. And then Ross said, don't make me regret this. And then Phoenix says, I ever give you a reason to regret anything I do? Fast forward to now, I'm pretty sure he does regret it. But continuing on, he said, I wouldn't be here if you didn't trust me. And then Ross says, you got the moves. And Phoenix says, and the ability to DM you here instead of the flood of that your Instagram DMs are. And then Ross said, okay, see you there. So there you go. That's the whole story so far. That is what happened with the very first incident. That is with the first situation. But we're not done. Of course, there's still more to it. But I just wanted to read this out, share a couple of my thoughts. But let's continue.
To let that wall down, right? And so I think for the second convention, and this is where things got really foggy, as you can tell from their document, because they said that trying to take advantage of people and help and promised a lot of things. And so let me kind of tell my side of the story.
Hey, Editor Ross here. So I want to interject because this could be important information. We never solidified any talks about payment details before his second convention, AX 2024. Before he came here, I toyed with the idea of possibly having him join us for Comic-Con 2024 at the end of that month, which are the screenshots in his doc. The screenshots in Fenn's doc shows me and him bantering. We were talking very casually about important matters. I feel like in his doc, the casual conversation was snipped. He left out some of his banter, which showed more color to our dynamic. But again, after reflecting, I understand that these are sensitive topics and I need to be more aware of the situation and do my part in making sure it was solidified.
Hey, I just want to interject in real quick. I just want to say this is so disrespectful at the bottom. I don't care who you are. No matter what is going on, no matter how casual or how good of a friend you might think that you are to someone, this is just, I'm gonna be this real. It's wild. I mean, especially just considering the fact that one, Phoenix cropped out and, he only showed a little piece, as I mentioned earlier before in this video. And then in the last video that, again, you get cropped narratives. But here, of course, you got a conversation. Phoenix says, okay, I've already done the math. My rent and utilities total is $830. Venmo, Zelle, PayPal. Oh, trust me, I would love to just spend time in Cali all of July, but I'm broke. Then Ross said LMFAO. And that's where the original screenshot between Ross and Phoenix end on Phoenix side. Now, here's Ross providing more. Phoenix said, I'll send my invoice to blank. And then Ross said, I'll think about it. And then Phoenix replies back saying, bitch says he'll think about it. And then once I'm there, you're going to cave. Just pay my shit, ho. That's just, my God, dog. That's so childish. That's unprofessional. That, I'm gonna be real. If I was Ross, I would have just blocked you after that. I would have said, we're not doing this. I was like, come on, man. You're already pressuring. Like, there's just so, it's just so unprofessional to me. Realistically, Ross has his own issues. Realistically, both of them should be a lot more professional in the way this is even conducted. But the way that Phoenix has just replied right there is just, I don't know. To me, it's just disgusting. And then the fact that you cropped that out and that you hid it so that people wouldn't see that, so that they couldn't form a different narrative, and you had the perfect image that, you're just some, you're some artist that's just trying to make his name out there, and you're hoping that Ross is going to, do right by you. And you're going to do, you're just there. You're just trying to be a good friend. To me, it's wrong. That's messed up.
But after these talks about possibly hosting him for July, some time has passed and I realized I did not want to host him for an entire month, considering hosting is a lot of energy and effort. I don't know him very well and it's convention season. I want to make sure I have enough alone time as much as possible to recharge. Instead, for Comic-Con 2024, we found 2 local people and I did pay them. Every time Fenn has worked with us, we provided lodging. These 2 people were local and did not need lodging.
I wish we truly solidified business or payment talks before them coming here. That wasn't solidified, and they flew here, and then in person they asked if they could get paid, and I was like, oh shit, this is really sensitive topics. I wish we could have ironed that out before you came here. After talking about it for a bit, we decided to pay them. When I was reading this document, I was a little confused because, did this person get paid? They seem very, angry, right? And so I looked back in my records. I'm like, we paid him. I know we did. And then I found out, yeah, we did pay him $640 for the weekend. We got convention lunches, dinner, accommodations, hosting, also any free merch that he asked for. I'm pretty sure I honored almost all of it. And the convention right after, which he wasn't a part of, he asked for a badge to attend, and I was like, here you go. So we gave him a free badge for another convention too. And so I felt like after all of this is so hard to swallow, just me trying to assess the situation of how this got so sour. I think maybe he had an expectation of wanting me to spotlight him in front of people, hey, introduction, and really handhold him through that whole process.
So here in this conversation, we see Phoenix say, hey, a favor, please. Can you ask Blink to check Instagram DM to him? I need to ask him something, but we haven't actually exchanged information yet. Fast forward, Phoenix say, hey, you wouldn't happen to have a spare badge for Lightbox I could use? Probably just going to go Friday, maybe a little on Saturday since I'm visiting a friend that day. Phoenix said, risking it all one more time to see if you have a spare exhibitor badge I can use for Friday only. And then look at the time span of how these questions were asked. September 25th, October 10th, October 23rd. And then Ross replies the next day saying, message Jeff. And then he says, thanks, man. Again, pestering, bothering the man. Doesn't have to give it to him, but he does. Phoenix really liked to portray and spin this narrative that Ross is someone who doesn't want to pay, doesn't want to do anything. It is so insane to see, a lot of how this is unfolded. And again, these are things that I've said in my previous video, which was we don't know the full story. And it genuinely felt like details are missing, and it was really hard to come to the conclusion, and it just, something seemed off. at least personally to me. And so I'm happy that we at least now have the full story and understand what's really going on here. And it really starts to paint the narrative that Phoenix is someone who, for some reason, I guess we'll find out later on in Ross's side, that something just soured them and they want to make a hit piece to make Ross come out to be like the bad guy. And I think that's really disgusting. I think that's messed up. Doesn't mean that Ross is, perfect, that he's amazing. But I would say that for everything we've seen so far, it speaks a lot to Phoenix's own character, seeing all of this. And it makes you really start to question the integrity, especially surrounding, it really starts to make you question the validity and the actual stuff that was presented in Phoenix's own document.
At convention, I'm really focused on the community experience. Some of you guys drive really far and you guys fly in and you spend a lot of money to be there. And I really want to be present for you guys. And so when I read his doc saying that I don't like to work, that made me really upset, because I think anyone that has met me at a convention knows that I try my absolute best to be as present as I can. I think I've done conventions for like 7 or 8 years. And for most of them, like 6 or 7 years of convention, I was there at the beginning of setup day, putting up my prints, trying to get everything to look good, work through convention weekends, and then I helped with breakdown. And I realized at the end of the convention, I was like really depleted, and I don't want to show up giving less than 100%. You guys are paying a lot to be there, and I want to be as present as I can. So in the last year or two, I've been trying to take a step back and resting more, so I can be as wired in to help you guys. And I feel like a lot of artists, creators, talent, they have set times, I'm going to be here for an hour to sign or 2 hours to sign, a block of time. But I was still there for 6-8 hours straight, trying my best. So it just makes me a little upset to see that.
So I will skip ahead a little bit into the video just because I don't want to just play beginning to end and cover every single little point, because this video would then probably end up going over an hour long. It might still by the time I'm done with it. But pretty much he goes on to say that he was pretty disappointed and kind of disgusted at the way that Phoenix tried to portray Ross as someone who isn't hardworking, someone who's never at his booths, never wants to work. And he felt like there was such a strong disconnect there, and it made no sense to him why Phoenix was even saying that. And he couldn't help but feel, hurt by that statement, because it's not true to him. He was like, how does that make sense? He's like, he stays at his booth. He tries to work. He wants to work. And so to hear that someone's portraying him as someone that he doesn't want to work was really hurtful to him.
I think in my mind, it was a little bit of a disconnect considering how much we gave him. And he also goes on to say, oh man, so violating. That I'm a bad dog owner, and when he came here, there was no dog toys for Milo, and dude, there's so many. Fen was a guest coming over to stay at my house. I cleaned up everything for his stay because I wanted him to live in a good environment, and not have dog toys everywhere. I apologize if you felt exploited or used in any way. That's the next thing that I want to touch on, because in their document, they mentioned that I tried coming to Ross first with all this, only to be shut down. And I don't think that's entirely accurate. Their way of coming to me with all this is sending, out of the blue, unsolicited, a whole thing, 16 points of things I need to improve about myself. Attacking my character, attacking everything, my personal life, my relationship, my friendships. It was just a lot to read, just really negative. Yeah, I felt like my boundaries was crossed. I don't consider this person a close friend. And so how does he have all these opinions that he's been kind of chewing on forever, and then out of the blue, boom, here's something that you need to work on.
And I'm gonna be honest, that's unhinged. That is actually unhinged. That is the wildest thing that I have seen this entire year. To message someone 16 things that you think they need to improve upon on their own life, acting like you know this person. I'm losing my voice because of this. Acting like you know this person is insane. That's actually crazy. And that's what I said in my last video was, You said at the end of your document that, oh, you spoke with Ross, you talked it out, you let him know everything that you thought about, and et cetera, et cetera. And what I said was, hey, you said you talked to Ross, you had all these other screenshots you showed, you pointed all those, but why didn't you post that one? Why didn't you share it? You said you talked with it, and apparently you both came to an understanding. Why didn't you share it? I'm starting to understand why. It's the same reason why you probably never commented on my original video. I know that you probably saw it. My video got over 100,000 views, same for a lot of other videos talking about the same situation, but you never once came to my own video, not once. And it's probably because I wasn't, trying to glaze you down and say, oh, Phoenix is the greatest person in the world and Ross is bad. When in reality, that's what a lot of people wanted to hear me say. People wanted me to say Ross bad, Phoenix good, when in reality, I criticized both Ross and Phoenix the way that I saw was justified. I was never here to defend Ross. I was never here to defend Phoenix. I was here to give my point of view from the way I perceived it. And the way I saw it was, hey, there's a lot of context missing. Hey, you haven't seen both sides of the story, and it's very weird the way Phoenix is posing these narratives, and it doesn't seem right to just assume that Ross is automatically the bad guy just because you have vibes that he's a garbage human without seeing both sides of the story. In the original situation, there's nothing wrong with believing Phoenix's document, but at the same time, you have to give some benefit of the doubt and not assume that Ross is automatically guilty just because you haven't heard his side of the story and you only saw a narrative portrayed to make him look like a bad guy. Because now, as you have seen, it looks like there was a lot of key information missing that it looks like Phoenix really tried to portray a certain situation about Ross. And again, you can still criticize Ross for a lot of things he's done, but it's pretty clear that the person that Phoenix was trying to make Ross out to be is nowhere near close to the actual reality of who he really is. But yeah, it's really unhinged to send some person that you don't even know like that, someone that is nowhere near close to you in your personal life, something such as 16 steps of how they can improve their life and be better, when in reality, the way it started was you're some random nobody just like me, and you just go and harass them in their DMs until eventually you built some connection. And then once you saw a chance to finally grasp onto something, you did, and you kept pressuring and bothering the man to hopefully eventually put you under his wing. And that's really all it boils down to. And eventually you weren't given the opportunities that you wanted. Eventually you saw that, hey, things weren't going the way you wanted. And then he probably pulled back and said, hey, this is getting ridiculous. This is unhinged. And then you felt, upset. And then you decided, hey, all right, if I can't get my attention, I can't get my name out there that way, I'll make a hit piece. I'll make a document. I'll get my name out there. And then eventually people started covering it. A lot of YouTubers made it. And they all say, hey, Ross is this bad guy. Phoenix is great. Phoenix going in all these YouTube comment sections. I read them. He portrayed him like he was some hero. He's like, I don't want nobody else to handle this situation. I'm going to take all the brunt of it, and I'm going to be the one that's, going to stop this from happening ever again.
Even though I didn't agree with this method, maybe I do have some blind spots. And let me take some time to read it and see if there's anything valid, because at my core, I do want to become a better person. I try to improve every day, right? And so I thanked him for his passion, and I appreciated his, kind of energy put into this, because obviously he cares. But after reflecting on the whole connection and seeing this, I do feel like it was pushing up against what I'm comfortable with. And I told him that I need to take a step back and revert to just internet acquaintances, and I need to protect my peace from all this, because this stuff is not for me. Maybe I wish I could have done a better job at sensing you were going through something and reached out a hand and said, hey, these are some serious accusations. This is a lot of negativity. Let's have a voice call. Let's have a video call and talk, or in person or something, right? But it just feels like a little sharp to feel like there's this case built behind your back of things like, all right, this, and then the tipping point, all right, boom, 20-page doc, let's fuck him up. It's, it's really hard.
And Ross is right. What do you do in that situation? If you are presented and someone hits you with a 16-step guide to your own life and how to improve it, how do you even respond to that? Especially if it's from a random ass dude that you don't even really know like that. How do you really respond? And of course, at least Ross talks about it. He says, hey, maybe there's a better way I can handle this, instead of just saying, thank you for this and moving on. Maybe he should have hopped in that call and talked with Phoenix out. Maybe he should have had more discussions. It's up for you to decide on that front. But I do think, yeah, it's pretty unhinged. And I can understand why someone would be stun locked and just say, hey, I need to step back. This is ridiculous. If someone that you met online and someone that you don't even really know like that, to the point where you're not best buddies, you're not going out to drink beers together every night, and they hit you with some 16-page document on how you can improve your life in 16 easy steps, I would be concerned. That would be Block City. I would be like, nah, I'm not dealing with that, bro. I'll be like, too long, didn't read, not dealing with that, bro. You don't know me like that. Move on. Because that's really what it comes off as. I can't help but just say it's really unhinged. I genuinely think that's unhinged. Maybe it came from a place of pure heart. Maybe there was some good intentions behind that message, and Finn was just too lost in the sauce, and he couldn't see it any other way other than that he thought he was doing something right. But I can tell you, it doesn't seem like it, especially considering the fact, again, that you hit it out and you didn't even bother to really say anything about it. I don't know. To be honest, I'm left speechless as well too. So continuing on, Ross addresses the situation with Mindy. It was another person that I spoke about in my previous video. He spoke about it and expressed, deep regret about how he treated her and wished that he would have done better and that he wants to right that wrong. He goes into it a lot more in depth. I highly recommend checking out his original video to hear more about that. Again, just trying to cover the super main points. I know a lot of people just skip that part, but I think it's really important, and I think that you should listen and go hear that part after you're done watching this video. But he did cover that, and he did talk about that for those who are curious. So to fast forward some of the things that he's covered, he talked about the situation with the plagiarism with Beazle. He goes over that and goes over really in depth in talking about what actually happened with that entire situation, how he was hurt and how it really hurt him. And then he goes to cover and talks about the AI stuff, which I'm going to start playing some of those clips in a second. But he also wanted to mention the part about him going to therapy and how he was pretty upset and pretty, disappointed to hear Beazle and Finn try to talk about his experience going to therapy so in depth and intimately. And he was just really disgusted and bothered by it. And then from there, he tried to take a break. He wanted to step back. That's the reason why he tried to get therapy, because he said he was on this grind mindset and that it was unhealthy. He was depressed. He wasn't happy. He wasn't in a good place and he needed to heal. And so he tried to step back, and that was part of why he went to therapy. And then fast forward, he goes on to now talk about him trying to figure out what the social media landscape is after he tries to start reconnecting, starting to make videos again, and him asking about AI and sort of where things are with that. He also mentioned earlier when he made his first initial video talking about AI, he saw it as something that, yes, it pretty much spewed out vomit. It was garbage. And granted, he said this is back in 2022 when, of course, AI was still just starting to take off, right, with all of that. But he thought maybe it has some cool ideas, some cool texture that maybe could potentially be useful at the time. But again, that was back in 2022, and then he disconnected himself from the internet and everything in general, social media, because he was trying to heal and he wasn't in a good place. And so then you fast forward, and then when he started trying to get back into content creation and things of that nature, he was asking sort of what the landscape of AI is.
I failed to kind of educate myself on the totality of the AI conversation, just being offline. And I asked my peers and I asked some people like, hey, what's the state of content these days? Like what's happening? Because I'm curious. Yeah, is it still TikTok dances? So as I slowly came back, I started to see this like really negative firestorm on the topic of AI. I'm a creator that just wants to see it for himself. I've always had like a natural curiosity, and I try to just like experiencing things myself and have my own awareness, my own opinion about it. And I feel like that curiosity, that natural curiosity gave me so much, it helped me start my YouTube channel, experimenting with video and art. And that curiosity led me to Nima and so much good, right? But as I saw this kind of firestorm get bigger and bigger and bigger, I was like, oh, this is too volatile. This is too much. And I backtracked and I tried to delete it because anyone that touches it seems like people like getting eliminated. And yeah, I was acting out of fear. I backtracked and I tried to hide it. And for that, I'm sorry. I don't want anyone to think like I'm trying to be deceptive. I was trying to navigate it thoughtfully, like maybe there was something there, because I don't want this to be a repeat of every new tool gets kind of shat on and then we use it later. Same thing with digital art. When digital art first came on the scene, people were shitting on it. When people started using references like, oh no, that's cheating. You have to think about everything from your head. And maybe there's a chance for me to scope it out and see if there's anything more to it. Conversation is way out of my field of comprehension. And for the community that I've built and my peers, I should have done better at educating myself on the nuances and the conversations and the environment effects. And I just turned around and went home, essentially. I fucked up, tried to hide it. And for that, I take full accountability for. I apologize.
So that's Ross's statement about AI and what led up to him using it, and pretty much the entire conversation, why he asked about it, et cetera, et cetera. And he owns up to it. He said he fucked up. He apologized for it. I don't really think there's much more you can ask for him of that. He admits his faults. He should have done research. He should have done more about it. That's really all you can leave it as. Finishing the rest of the video, he pretty much just talks about how this was an eye-opening situation for him. He wants to do better. There's a lot of things he can improve upon. He's trying to find his new beginning, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to spoil it all. You can go watch it for yourself. I'm going to put a link in the description below so you can see everything else in full, the other parts that I didn't cover. But those are the main things that I know people are interested in, things that people were curious and want to know his side about and actually know what was going on. Not really much more to be said about that. Only thing I can say is, always wait for both sides of the story. It's always fine to believe one side right off the bat, but never discredit someone else immediately just because you saw one part of the story. Always ask for more evidence. If you feel like something is being cropped out, you feel like something is only being shown part way and you're not seeing the full picture, ask for more. Question it. Have your doubts. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to believe that automatically someone else is wrong because you doubt the things that you showed them. It's just that you want to make an educated decision and opinion, inform it based on the things that are provided, and you don't have enough to really form a concrete opinion other than someone giving you one side of their story, when in reality, you should be asking for the other side, which we now finally got. And it paints a clear picture as to what exactly happened in those documents and what really was going on. And I think that, again, is poor on Phoenix for the way that he tried to portray a narrative, and that he should be ashamed, he should be disgusted with himself, and he should do better. That's really all I'm going to leave it at there. Wild situation. I know it's a long video. Wanted to cover a lot of it. Wanted to make sure I covered it in depth. You made this far into the video. Again, I know it's a lot. I'm sorry, guys. You made this far in the video. Consider giving a like, subscribe to the channel. Let me comment what you think. Have a great day. Yeah.